He thought I couldn't spell fraud. Thought I wouldn't notice. I found out when the bank froze my pension deposit. They told me there was a loan under my name, $40,000, opened without my consent, without my knowledge. At first, I didn't feel the panic that I should have. There was no shock, no scramble. I wasn't confused. I was already calm. Too calm. I walked back to my desk, quietly, as if everything were normal. He was still asleep in the next room, the same place where he thought I couldn't hear him on the phone last month, or see the little changes in his eyes. All the signs had been there, hidden behind the charm he wore like a mask. But it didn't matter now. The betrayal had already been done. The damage was already real. He had taken my name, my trust, and turned it into a number on a bank's ledger. I didn't shout, didn't cry. I printed everything: account numbers, loan details, the signatures he thought were mine quietly, without a single tremor in my hand. I let the printer hum its steady rhythm while he slept, unaware. The betrayal was his, but the next move, that was mine. When I think about what I gave for him, it feels like an entire lifetime wrapped up in moments, small and large. I raised him on my own, just me. There was never any talk of a second income or help from others. There was no one to lean on but myself. So I did what I had to do. I worked long hours, late shifts at the diner, sometimes pulling doubles to make sure the bills got paid, to make sure there was enough food on the table. I didn't complain about the hours or the exhaustion. It was my job, my duty. I wasn't asking for anyone's sympathy. I didn't need a thank you. I just kept going. For him. I did it for him. For the future I wanted him to have. In the mornings, when the sun was barely up, I'd get him ready for school, making sure his clothes were clean, his lunch packed, his backpack ready. It was a dance we did, over and over again, each day like the last, and each day more precious than the one before. I didn't mind it. There was no me in the mornings. I was already at work before the sun came up. I worked. I cleaned. I signed permission slips with hands that hadn't eaten. There were nights I stayed awake, wondering how I was going to make it work, how I was going to get through the next month, the next bill. But I always found a way. I always did. Even if it meant I didn't sleep, or didn't eat, or didn't take a moment for myself. I sacrificed my needs, because his were more important. Always. Through it all, I kept him at the center of my world. The reason I kept pushing. The reason I stayed strong. I wanted him to see the sacrifices I made and understand what it took to raise him, what it took to give him the opportunities I didn't have. I wanted him to have everything that I didn't, to see a better world than the one I'd known. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself in the giving. I forgot that I was a person too, with my own needs, my own dreams. I didn't mind though. I never asked for anything in return. All I wanted was to make sure he had everything I couldn't give him as a child. I wanted to give him more than what I had. I wasn't angry then. No. There was just quiet pride in the work I did, in the life I built for him. But now, as I stand on the other side of it, I wonder how many nights I spent wondering what I would have done if I'd asked for something, just one thing in return. What would it have been like if I had expected something from him? Would it have been different? Or would I still be here, doing what I did, giving everything, hoping that one day he'd see it, hoping that one day he'd understand? I gave him everything, every part of me. I gave him the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the endless hours of work. I gave him my youth, my strength, and my hopes for his future. And he didn't see it. He didn't understand the price I paid. He took what he wanted, thinking nothing of it. No gratitude. No appreciation, just a quiet theft of what I had given him. It started small, little things I didn't want to see. The way he would borrow my debit card, just for gas, and promise he'd pay me back next week. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was my son. He needed it. I had always been the one who took care of things, and I never thought twice about helping him out when he asked. But the more he borrowed, the more I noticed how often he needed it. How quickly the next week turned into another excuse, another delay. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that something was slipping away, something I couldn't quite grasp. something I hadn't been able to hold on to. I kept telling myself it was just temporary. He was struggling, just like I had. But as the weeks went on, I began to notice other things I couldn't ignore. First, it was the mail. Letters that should have been coming to the house just stopped. My pension checks, bills, official notices, they weren't arriving like they should have. I thought it was a mistake, a delay, maybe a mix-up with the post office. But when I asked him about it, he just brushed it off. "Don't worry about it, Mom," he'd say, his voice too calm, like he was reassuring me, like I was the one overreacting. "I'll make sure everything's handled." And for a moment, I believed him. I believed he was trying to help. I thought he meant he was taking care of me. But now, looking back, I see that the truth was different. He said he'd take care of things. And I believed that meant men out my credit, not my bank accounts, not my name. But somewhere, deep down, I started to feel something was wrong. The way he was using my card more and more. The way the mail kept disappearing, it all added up. But I told myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was just getting older. Maybe I was losing track of things. I kept brushing it off. I had enough on my plate after all. I had always been the one to handle everything. The bills, the errands, the life decisions. I was used to carrying the weight. So I let him do it. I let him take care of things. The truth, though, was starting to poke through the cracks of my denial. I wasn't naive. I'd lived long enough to know when something felt off. I had heard the stories about people getting taken advantage of. Stories of people who trusted the wrong people. But I never thought it would happen to me. Not from him. Not my son. And yet, the longer I let it go, the more the sense of unease grew. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to face the reality that he might be taking advantage of me. He was my son. I had given him everything, sacrificed my own needs for his. And yet, here I was, watching the signs pile up, knowing something wasn't right but refusing to admit it. I told myself I was being foolish, being paranoid. But it wasn't paranoia when the mail stopped coming altogether. When my bank account started showing strange withdrawals. When I found a loan taken out in my name. And it wasn't paranoia when I found that my own son had stolen from me. It wasn't paranoia. It was betrayal. And still, I kept telling myself that it would be fine, that it was just a phase, that everything would work itself out. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I just didn't want to face it. I didn't want to believe the one person I trusted most would be the one to take everything from me. But as the weeks went by, as the mail never came and the balance in my account dropped lower, I couldn't hide from it anymore. It wasn't just that he was taking my money. It wasn't just that he was using me. It was that he had taken my trust and, in its place, left nothing but quiet manipulation. He didn't need to shout or argue. He had learned how to take what was mine without me even noticing, until it was too late. And all I had left was the sinking feeling that I had been too blind to see it. The calls started coming in the middle of the night. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a wrong number? But then there were more. They were persistent. Too persistent. Asking for someone I didn't recognize. Debt collectors. The first few times I tried to explain, told them it wasn't me. Told them they must have the wrong person. But the calls didn't stop. They only got worse, angrier, more demanding. Every time I picked up, I heard the same thing. "We need payment, ma'am. Your account's overdue." I couldn't understand it. I had always paid my bills, always kept track of my finances. So I started digging into it, asking the bank for information. They told me something I could hardly believe. There was a loan, a large one, under my name, $40,000 to be exact. A loan I had never signed for. I froze. My hands were shaking as I flipped through the papers the bank had sent me. That's when I saw it. He had used my social security number, my birthday. He had taken my name and used it to open the loan. He had forged my signature, and somehow, he had made it all look legitimate. It was like nothing to him. He had stolen from me without even blinking, without a second thought. My heart sank as I realized that the betrayal wasn't just in what he had done, but in how little he seemed to care. I couldn't speak at first. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to admit that the one person I trusted most had done this to me. But the evidence was right there in front of me, proof of the loan, the forged documents. The more I looked, the more I understood the extent of what he had done. He hadn't just stolen money. He had stolen my peace, my safety, my security. He had taken everything that was mine and made it his own. I remember the day I confronted him. I sat across from him at the dinner table, my stomach twisted in knots, my heart heavy with the weight of what I knew. I asked him about the loan. I asked him how he could have done this to me. And he looked me right in the eye sand, smiled. He didn't apologize. He didn't show any remorse. He didn't even seem to care. It was just a loan, Mom, he said, shrugging like it was nothing. I needed it. I thought you'd understand. Understand? He thought I would understand? He had taken my name, used my identity, and forged my signature, and he thought I would understand? The humiliation cut through me like a knife. He had stolen from me, yes, but the real pain was in how he didn't see it, how he didn't see what he had done. The betrayal was in how easily he dismissed it, like it didn't matter at all. I sat there in silence, trying to process it, trying to figure out if this was really happening. How could someone I had raised, someone I had sacrificed so much for, do this to me? How could he look me in the eye and smile, like none of it mattered, like it was just a simple mistake? I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The paralysis of it all had me frozen. This wasn't just a financial loss. This was the loss of trust, of a relationship that I had worked so hard to build, only for him to tear it down with a signature on a loan document. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I just sat there, quietly, knowing that whatever love I thought was there, whatever respect I thought we had, was gone. He had taken it all without a second glance. He had forged my name, and he smiled over dinner like it never happened. Like the destruction of our bond meant nothing to him. It was the coldest, most humiliating thing I had ever experienced. But what hurt the most was knowing that I couldn't undo what had been done. The damage was done, and there was no turning back. I could feel the distance between us stretching, growing wider with every passing moment. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and I realized, deep in my bones, that there was no going back. Not for him, not for me. He had taken more than just money. He had taken my trust, and with it, any hope I had left that we could ever be the family I thought we were. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't throwing things or shouting his name. I wasn't crying or begging for understanding. No, that wasn't the way this was going to happen. I knew the game had already shifted, and I had to play my hand carefully. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of watching me unravel. Instead, I did what I had done my entire life. I stayed calm, focused, and I made a plan. I started by gathering everything. My hands moved steadily as I pulled every document, every piece of paper that could prove what he had done. Bank statements, loan documents, emails from the bank, even old credit card receipts, everything I could find. I knew the value of having the evidence right in front of me. There was no room for error. I couldn't afford to miss a detail, and I couldn't let him think I was as powerless as he assumed. He thought I was just an old woman, lost in front of the television, no idea what was going on around me. But I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't distracted. I was printing evidence, quietly, in the other room, out of his sight. I made sure everything was in order, every signature, every piece of paper, each transaction, carefully documented. My mind was sharp. It had to be. And the more I worked, the more the pieces of his betrayal fell into place, perfectly and undeniably. After a few days of collecting the pieces, I took the stack of evidence to a senior center that had a legal clinic. They offered free consultations for people like me, people who didn't have the money for an expensive lawyer, but still needed help navigating the system. I walked in, my heart steady, my mind clear. I wasn't intimidated. I wasn't nervous. I had all the power I needed in those papers. The lawyer who sat across from me was younger than I had expected, a little too eager, but that didn't matter. He listened closely as I explained everything, as I laid out my plan. He didn't interrupt me. He didn't ask questions at first. They just took the papers I handed him and began to look them over. I could see his face change as he read, saw his expression grow serious with each new document. "This is a serious case," he said finally, looking up at me. "If this is all legitimate, if what you're saying is true, then we have grounds for a very strong legal complaint." I didn't smile. I didn't get emotional. I just nodded. I wasn't doing this for sympathy, and I wasn't doing it for a pat on the back. I was doing it for me. I was doing it because I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not after everything I had sacrificed, not after everything I had done for him. I had worked hard to give him the best life I could. And now, here he was, taking it all for granted, taking what was mine as if it meant nothing. I told the lawyer about the loan, how he had used my name without my permission, how he had forged my signature. I told him about the calls from the debt collectors, how I had been blindsided by the whole thing. He listened without judgment, without offering pity, and that made all the difference. "We can do this," the lawyer said, after what felt like hours of looking through papers. "We'll file a complaint. We'll make sure this is handled. But you need to know it won't be easy. It won't be quick." I didn't mind that. I had waited this long. I could wait a little longer if it meant getting the justice I deserved. "I'm not worried about how long it takes," I told him. "I'm worried about making sure he knows I'm not just going to sit back and let him destroy everything I built. He doesn't get to take that from me." The lawyer nodded and made a few quick notes. "We'll get started right away." When I left the legal clinic that day, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't relief. It wasn't joy. It was something quieter, something more powerful. I knew then that I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let him keep taking from me without consequences. I had the evidence, I had the truth, and I had the law on my side. He thought I was sleeping in front of the television. He thought I was just some old woman who wouldn't notice or care. But I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't weak. I was writing my response, collecting my power, and waiting for the moment when everything would turn, when the storm would be his, not mine. I filed the complaint. I knew it was time to stop sitting quietly and letting him get away with everything he'd taken from me. The lawyer had already prepared everything. The affidavit, the complaint, everything laid out neatly with clear evidence. I wasn't about to let this be swept under the rug. I wasn't going to let him think he could walk away without facing the consequences of what he had done. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, about showing him that I wasn't someone he could use. I went to the police station next, filing the report with everything I had: the forged documents, the loan records, the mail that had been redirected. I could see the officer's face when he looked at the paperwork. His brow furrowed as he read through the details, taking his time. He wasn't in any rush, and that gave me a quiet satisfaction. I wasn't the one in a hurry. I wasn't desperate. I was calm, collected, and I had everything in order. He took the report without question, without hesitation. I had my facts, my proof. He couldn't ignore it. As I sat there, waiting for the process to unfold, I thought about all the years I'd spent keeping things together. All those nights I had worked, cooked, cleaned, and managed every part of our life. All that time, I had given so much, and in the end, I had only been left with scraps, but not anymore. Now, I had the tools to take back what had been stolen. Now, I had the law on my side. I went home after filing the report and took a moment to breathe, to sit in the quiet of my house. But the quiet didn't feel like defeat. It felt like power. It felt like strategy. I had made my move, and now I was waiting. Waiting for the court summons. Waiting for him to feel the weight of what he had done. A few weeks later, the summons arrived. It was addressed to him, as it should have been. I looked at the envelope for a moment, the name on the front in bold letters. The same name he had stolen and used as if it were his own. I didn't feel anger when I opened the envelope. I didn't feel the need to gloat. But I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I had used his name too. In the complaint, in the affidavit, in the court summons. The tables had turned. He had thought he could use me. Use my name, my identity, my trust. But now, I had used his just as easily, just as powerfully. He was going to have to answer for this. I wasn't going to let him walk away from what he had done. I wasn't going to let him hide behind his excuses. And he wasn't going to get away with it because he thought I wouldn't fight back. I wasn't just going to let him ruin my life and walk away with nothing. I took it all back, quietly. No shouting, no anger. Just strategic, quiet moves, and the law to back them up. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't looking to hurt him, but I was going to make sure he never saw me as someone he could take advantage of again. This wasn't just about what he owed me in money or repayment. It was about holding him accountable for the way he had stolen from me, for taking what he wanted, and never thinking about the consequences. The complaint was filed, the police report was in, and the court summons had been served. The wheels were in motion, and I was moving forward. I wasn't going to let him take what was mine without paying the price. He had used my name, but I used his. And now, he was going to see what that meant. The day of the court hearing, I sat still. I didn't rush. I didn't fidget. I wasn't nervous. I didn't need to be. It was all in place now, everything I had gathered, everything I had worked for, everything he had thought would go unnoticed. I had already said what needed to be said. Now, it was time for him to hear it from someone else. He showed up late, of course, wearing that same defiant look he always wore when he thought he could charm his way through life. But it didn't matter anymore. The charm didn't work on me. I had learned long ago how to see through it. I didn't flinch as he glanced at me, his eyes shifting nervously when he saw I was sitting there, ready for this moment. I stayed quiet while the proceedings started. The judge was calm, methodical. As he went over the facts, my name, my social security number, the loan, the forgery, everything that had been done. My son stuttered when his name was mentioned, his confidence shaken, his usual bravado slipping through his fingers like sand. He tried to explain, to make excuses. He said he didn't understand the gravity of what he had done, that it was a mistake, that he was just trying to make ends meet. But the more he spoke, the more I could hear the cracks in his voice, the weakness in his arguments. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The judge did all the talking. He read the documents, my name, my social, the forged signature, the loan paper sand with every line. My son's shame grew thicker, more suffocating. The air in the room seemed to grow colder with each word, and I felt a quiet, satisfying sense of power settle inside me. The judge's voice was steady and firm when he spoke next. The debt associated with this loan is hereby reversed, he said, his words like a quiet but firm slap across my son's face. The defendant, Mr. Sun's name, is being charged with fraud and identity theft. Pending further investigation, charges will be filed. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I kept my gaze straight ahead, watching as he processed the words, the impact of what was happening sinking in. His face went pale, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to find the right words. But there were no words. He had none. The truth was out now, laid bare before the court, and there was nothing left for him to say. I could feel the tension in the room, the silent realization that this was the end of the road for him. I didn't need to shout or scream. I didn't need to rub it in. He was already paying for what he had done, and I was content in knowing that justice was moving forward, slowly but surely. His silence now spoke louder than anything he could have said. The lawyer on his side shuffled uncomfortably in his chair, trying to find a way to soften the blow. But there was no softening it. There was no easy way out of this. He had taken from me, and now he was being held accountable. The debt was gone, but the shame would linger. The charges would stick, and the stain of his actions would never fade. He tried to catch my eye, but I didn't look at him. He didn't deserve it. He had taken my trust, my name, my dignity, and now, in the quiet of that courtroom, I was taking back what was mine. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to say anything. The judge had already said it all. When the hearing ended, I stood up slowly, without a word, and walked out of the room. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. He was the one who had to carry the weight now. I had already let the truth do its work. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Light because I had done what needed to be done. And light because I wasn't chasing after him anymore. I wasn't trying to get him to understand. I wasn't asking for anything. I didn't yell. I let the judge do it. The law had spoken, and the silence that followed felt like my victory. The calls started coming almost immediately after the court hearing. At first, it was a couple of missed calls, but then they became more frequent, more desperate. I didn't pick up. I didn't want to hear the apologies, the excuses. I knew exactly what he was going to say. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know what I was doing. But the truth was, it was too late for apologies. He had already shown me who he was, and the damage had already been done. The first voicemail came after the second call. His voice was shaky, his words stumbling over each other as he tried to express regret, tried to explain himself. He said he was sorry, that it was a mistake. I didn't delete the voicemail, though. I kept it. Not because I needed to listen to it, not because I wanted to hear his regret, but because I needed to remember what he thought would fix everything. His apology wasn't going to change anything. It wasn't going to undo the betrayal, and it wasn't going to make me forget what had happened. So, I let the voicemails pile up, each one sounding more like the last, with the same tone of helplessness, of pleading. I'm sorry, Mom. Please pick up. I could hear his frustration, his anger at me for not answering, and I knew that somewhere deep down, he thought I would forgive him. He thought I would let it all slide, as I had done so many times before. But not this time. I never listened to the voicemails. I didn't need to. I knew what they said. They said he was sorry, and I didn't need to hear that anymore. I had heard it too many times, and it never meant anything. He would apologize, and I would forgive him. That's how it worked, how it had always worked. But this time, it was different. This time, the betrayal was too deep. This time, his apology didn't matter. He called again the next day, and the day after that, the pattern didn't change. He was still trying to get through to me, still trying to make me listen to his voice, trying to make me believe that he had changed, that he was sorry for what he had done. But the truth was, I didn't need his apology. What I needed was for him to take responsibility for his actions, for him to understand that it wasn't just about the money, or the loan, or the forged signature. It was about the trust he had broken, the relationship he had destroyed. I kept my phone silent when his calls came in. I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need to listen to the excuses he had crafted, the stories he told himself to make it easier to live with what he had done. His guilt didn't change the fact that he had stolen from me. It didn't change the fact that he had thought he could take everything without facing any consequences. One evening, a new voicemail arrived. I knew exactly what he would say. It was a mistake, he would tell me, the words coming easily now, as though he had rehearsed them. I didn't mean it, Mom. Please forgive me. But I had already forgiven him too many times. I had forgiven him when he lied about the money. I had forgiven him when he took things from me without asking. I had forgiven him when he walked away from the family and left me to pick up the pieces. But this time, This time, there was no forgiveness left. He had burned that bridge when he stole from me, when he betrayed my trust in the most personal way possible. I played the voicemail once, just to hear the tone of his voice. He was asking for forgiveness, begging for a second chance. But I didn't need to hear it again. It was a mistake, he said, his voice strained, his voice cracking under the weight of what he had done. So was trusting him. I said aloud to no one. I didn't pick up the phone, and I didn't call him back. There was nothing more to say. I had said all that I needed to say. The court had spoken. The truth had been laid out, and the damage was done. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me into believing that a simple apology could erase the hurt, the shame, the betrayal. As the calls continued to come in, I didn't give in. I didn't cave. I had given him enough chances. I had given him everything for years, and in the end, he had taken it all for granted. So I let the voicemails pile up, and every time, I reminded myself that I didn't need him to make this right. I had already done it myself. The silence between us grew, but it wasn't painful. It was freeing. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. He had made his choices, and now So had I. For the longest time, I thought I was the burden. I thought I was the one who had to keep giving, keep sacrificing, keep doing everything for everyone else. I thought that if I didn't do it, if I didn't handle everything, it would all fall apart. I thought that was my role, that I was the one who had to carry the weight to make sure everything worked. But the truth, the real truth, is that I had been used, not loved. I had given everything, and in return, I had gotten nothing but manipulation. I had been there for him through every up and down, always trying to make his life easier, always bending over backward to make sure he never needed for anything. But somewhere along the way, I had become invisible. My needs didn't matter. My feelings didn't matter. And in the end, my sacrifices didn't matter either. All he had seen was someone he could take from, someone he could use until there was nothing left to give. It hurt at first, realizing that it hurt to accept that the love I had given had never been returned, that the care I had shown had been taken for granted. But now, as I sit here, in this quiet house, in this place I've made for myself, I realize something else. I realize that I am not the burden. I never was. I've learned to find peace in solitude. There is no noise here, no chaos, no one taking from me, no one expecting me to do everything. In the silence, I have finally heard my own voice again. It's soft, yes, but it's steady. It's mine, and I don't need to apologize for it. I'm not broken, not like I once thought. I'm whole. I'm strong. I've built this life for myself with my own hands. Every bill I pay, every decision I make, it's mine to own. There's no one else's shadow over me anymore. I pay my bills with my own hands, and that feels like freedom. I don't need anyone to tell me that I'm doing it right. I don't need anyone to confirm my worth. I know it now. I used to wait for someone to bring me flowers, for someone to recognize the work I had done, the love I had given, the sacrifices I had made. But those flowers never came, and you know what? I didn't wait for them anymore. This time, I bought my own. I bought flowers for myself, because I deserved them. I didn't need anyone else to validate that. I didn't need anyone else to tell me I was worthy of being appreciated. I had spent so many years waiting for that, but I realized that I was enough. I had always been enough. The flowers sit on my kitchen table now, fresh and bright. A reminder to myself that I am the one who gets to choose how I feel, how I live, and how I see my worth. I didn't need anyone else to define me anymore. I was the one who had kept everything together, and now I was the one who was free. Free from the shadows, free from the expectations, free from the guilt of giving too much. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I've let all of that go. All the years I spent trying to fix everything, trying to make everyone else's life better, I can finally let go of that. I don't have to do that anymore. What I have now is my own. My peace, my space, my life. Maybe I wasn't the burden after all. Maybe I was always meant to be the one who took care of herself. And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I sit here, in the quiet of my home, surrounded by the small things I've built, the flowers, the bills paid, the peace I've earned, and for the first time in a long time, I know that I am not just surviving. I am living. And that, finally, is enough. It's funny how you can go through life thinking you're the only one who's been through something, thinking you're alone, that no one else could possibly understand what you've been carrying. But I've learned something important in these last few years. There are more of us than they know. It started with an online forum, a group for women my age, women who were dealing with the ups and downs of life, women who had lived through the same struggles, the same triumphs, the same quiet moments of strength. I'd never been the type to open up much, not to strangers, not about the hard things. But one night, I found myself reading post after post from women who shared stories that sounded just like mine stories, of being overlooked, of being used, of giving everything and getting nothing in return. They shared their experiences, like whispers at first subtle, guarded, the kind of stories you tell only when you feel safe. But there was something about reading those words, about seeing those lives mirrored in my own, that made me realize I wasn't as isolated as I thought. They were out there just like me. Women who had been betrayed, used, and yet, somehow, still found the strength to stand up again. One night, I decided to share my story. I wasn't sure what would happen, if anyone would even care, but I felt like it was time. I had kept everything in for so long. I had been so quiet for so many years, trying to hold it all together, trying to make sense of what had happened. But I realized that maybe, just maybe, by saying it out loud, I could set myself free. I typed the words, my fingers trembling a little, but I didn't stop. I wrote about what my son had done, how he had used me, how he had betrayed me, and how I had fought back. I told them about the court hearing, about the police report, about the quiet strength that had carried me through it all. I hit post and sat back waiting. The responses didn't come quickly, but they came. One by one, other women began to share their own stories. They shared the pain, the confusion, the betrayal they had faced, and the strength they had found in themselves, just like I had. Some of them had gone through similar situations with their children, others with spouses, or partners, or friends. But the pattern was the same. They had all given so much of themselves, and in return, they had been taken for granted, left to pick up the pieces alone. And then came the most powerful thing of all, the nods, the understanding, the recognition. They didn't say much at first. They just nodded. In their responses, they said things like, "I get it. I've been there. You're not alone." It was simple. It was quiet. But it was also everything. For the first time in a long time, I felt connected, not to the world that had taken so much from me, but to a sisterhood of women who had lived through it, who had made it to the other side and were standing tall. There was more strength in that connection than I had realized. In those words, those simple phrases of acknowledgement, I found the power to heal, to move forward, to be okay with where I was. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us, standing together, lifting each other up, sharing our pain and our power in a way that didn't make us weak, but made us stronger. Later, I went to a senior center for a community event. I didn't expect much at first, but as I sat down with a group of women, I started hearing the same stories. They weren't the same in detail, but the core was the same. They whispered their stories to each other softly at first, but with each word, with each shared experience, the room seemed to fill with an energy I hadn't expected. And when it was my turn, I spoke up, not in a whisper, but in a voice that was steady, sure. I told them about what I had been through. I told them about the betrayal, the strength it took to stand up again. And they nodded, just like they did online. But here, in person, the nods meant something more. They meant that I was heard. They meant that I wasn't just a survivor, but a sister. We were all survivors. We had all been through the hardest parts of life and come out the other side, stronger than we had ever imagined. I wasn't alone anymore. None of us were. And in that moment, I realized something else. They weren't just my peers. They were my sisters. And we had all walked through fire and come out whole. The power we had, the strength we shared, was something they couldn't take away. Not anymore. There are more of us than they know. We're here, quietly powerful, standing together, carrying each other forward. And nothing at all can take that from us. I sat in the lawyer's office, the air between us quiet but purposeful. There was no rush, no need for extra words. Just a steady focus on what had to be done. He had a kind face, but I could see the respect in his eyes as I laid out what I wanted. The will, the legacy. It wasn't a decision I had made lightly, but after everything that had happened, I knew it was the only way. I had worked hard for everything I had, not just the material things, but the life I had built, the lessons I had learned along the way. And I would not let it all end up in the hands of someone who had shown me nothing but betrayal. No, it wasn't him who would inherit what I had left. It would be the future. It would be the ones who could use it to create something better, something that would stand for more than just a name. I told the lawyer what I wanted. My home, my savings, all of it, every last penny would go into a scholarship fund. A scholarship for young women who had the drive but not the means, who needed a chance, who needed to be reminded that they, too, could rise above everything that tried to hold them down. I wanted them to know that they mattered, that they could have a future that didn't look like the one I had been handed. I wanted to give them something I never had opportunity. The lawyer nodded as I spoke, and I saw him write it all down. There was no hesitation, no need for clarification. He understood. He knew what I was doing. It wasn't just about the money, about the things I'd accumulated. It was about creating something that would carry my name forward, but in a way that would mean something more than a few possessions. When we finished revising the will, I felt a quiet relief wash over me. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was doing it because it was the right thing to do. My assets, my savings, they were never meant to line someone's pockets or be used to fuel a sense of entitlement. They were meant to be used for good, for growth, for change. And if they couldn't be used in that way by the person I had trusted most, then they would go to the next generation, to the ones who would carry my legacy in a way I could be proud of. He didn't deserve anything. He hadn't earned it. He hadn't shown me that he was worthy of my trust, let alone my inheritance. And I wasn't going to let him take from me, not in life and certainly not in death. As the lawyer handed me the final papers to sign, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The decision was made. The legacy I was leaving behind wasn't tied to a bloodline that had betrayed me. It wasn't about keeping a family name intact. It was about giving something back, something that would live beyond me, something that would last longer than a grudge, longer than a name. I signed the papers, careful, deliberate, without looking back. He would be left with nothing but his own mistakes, and I would leave behind something that would make a real difference. The future didn't belong to him. It belonged to the ones who understood what it meant to work for something, to earn it, and to give it to others in turn. Later, when I was home, sitting at my desk, the silence in the room felt final. I wasn't upset. I wasn't angry. I was simply done. The way I had lived, the way I had given. It was all behind me now. The decisions had been made, and there was no more to say. I wasn't writing grocery lists anymore. I wasn't writing checks or cleaning up messes. I was writing a legacy, one that would outlive me, one that would be remembered not for the things I had, but for the good I had done with them. It wasn't about what I left behind in terms of possessions. It was about what I had given to others, what would live on, in the lives of young women who would now have the chance to rise, to succeed, and to carry on the work I had started. They thought I was writing grocery lists. I was writing legacy. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The flowers arrived just after I had filed the final documents, right when I thought I was done with it all. It started with the usual and apologetic card, a sweet message that tried to soften the hard edges of everything that had happened. "I'm sorry, Mom. I made a mistake. Please forgive me." His words, familiar words. Words I had heard too many times before, floated on the page like fragile promises. But this time, they didn't hold weight. This time, I didn't need them. The flowers were beautiful, white roses with delicate petals, soft and innocent looking, but I knew better. I had spent enough years seeing through false gestures to know exactly what they were: empty symbols meant to make it look like everything could be fixed with a pretty bouquet, like forgiveness could be bought with a few flowers. I didn't pick them up. I didn't arrange them in a vase. Instead, I let them sit there, the delicate stems withering on my kitchen table, as I thought about what I was going to do. He didn't get it. None of it. He thought the flowers were enough. The card was enough. But they weren't. Not after everything he'd taken from me. Not after everything he had thought he could get away with. He didn't understand that no amount of flowers, no pretty words, could make up for the betrayal. They weren't going to fix anything. I didn't feel the rush of anger that might have come in the past. I didn't feel the sting of guilt, the urge to pick up the phone and say, "It's okay, I forgive you." I didn't need to forgive him, not yet, not after what he had done. I was unmoved by the flowers, unmoved by the apology. So I sent them back. I didn't do it out of spite. I didn't send them back as an act of revenge. I sent them back because he needed to understand that I wasn't someone to be pacified with pretty words and gifts. I wasn't someone to be soothed by his empty apologies. I was someone who had been used, manipulated, and taken for granted. And I wasn't going to let him think for a second that a bouquet of roses could erase all of that. I went to the post office the next morning and mailed a certified letter proof of receipt, a paper trail, just like I had learned to do. I had included the court ruling, the documents that showed his betrayal for what it was, the loan, the forgery, the debt that he had thought was just some casual mistake. I wanted him to see it all laid out before him. I wanted him to see the consequences of his actions. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to beg for an explanation. The documents were clear enough. He would get the letter, signed and sealed, delivered back to him. He would know that I had taken my stand. No more empty gestures, no more false promises. It was done. They sent white roses, I said to myself as I sealed the envelope. I mailed back thorns. And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. I had drawn the line. He had crossed it, and now there was no going back. He had thought he could play with me, thought he could fix everything with a simple apology. But I had no room for that anymore. I had no room for his games. When the letter arrived at his door, I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need to hear another apology, another excuse. I didn't need to hear him say he was sorry again. The flowers were gone, the words were gone, and now he would have to face the reality of what he had done. I didn't care what he thought of me anymore. He had already shown me who he was. I was done, and I wasn't turning back. I rented a little cottage at the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a small place with a garden out back and a porch that caught the afternoon sun. But to me, it felt like freedom. It felt like peace. I didn't need anything grand. I just needed a space of my own, a place where I could breathe again without the weight of everything I had carried before. The neighbors were kind, the kind of people who wave as they pass, who stop to chat when you're out watering the flowers, the kind who welcome you in without expecting anything in return. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect. I had spent so many years living in a way that felt forced, always taking care of others, always playing a role that wasn't my own. But here, no one knew me as his mother. No one called me Mom or expected me to be anything other than who I was. They just called me Margaret. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like a gift. I spent my days walking down quiet streets, letting the fresh air fill my lungs, watching the birds flit about and the trees sway in the breeze. It was simple, but it was enough. I had been used to walking with purpose, to always having somewhere to go, something to do, someone to take care of. But now, I could walk just for the sake of walking. No destination in mind, no hurry to get anywhere. Just the pleasure of moving, of feeling my body strong beneath me again. The garden was my sanctuary. I planted tomatoes, something simple, something I could tend to every day and watch grow in its own time. I had never been one for gardening before, but something about the rhythm of it, the quiet work of digging in the soil and watering the plants, made me feel connected to the earth in a way I hadn't known I needed. There was something grounding about watching those tiny seeds push their way through the dirt, something reassuring about knowing that, with a little patience and care, something beautiful could bloom. I joined a book club, something I had always wanted to do but had never found the time for. Now, I had the time. Every month, we'd gather at someone's house, share a cup of tea, and talk about the book we'd read. It was small, but it was enough. I had spent so many years giving to others, never asking for anything in return, never taking time for myself. But now, I was learning to enjoy the small things, the conversations, the books, the quiet moments spent in the company of women who, like me, were finding their way again. No one called me Mom here. They just called me Margaret. And that was enough. It was enough to be seen for who I was, not who I had been. It was enough to be able to step into this new chapter of my life without the weight of old expectations, without the need to fulfill roles that didn't belong to me. I was free. Every morning, I woke up to the soft light of dawn filtering through the windows, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude for this new life. I didn't have to answer to anyone anymore. I didn't have to explain myself. The life I had built was mine, and it was enough. I didn't need anything else. I spent my evenings sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, feeling the cool breeze on my skin. I didn't rush anymore. I didn't need to. I had learned to savor the small moments, the simple joys that had once been overshadowed by everything else. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees, the taste of tomatoes fresh from the vine, the quiet hum of life moving forward, one small step at a time. I had built this life for myself, and it was mine. No one could take that from me. The past was behind me now, and I was finally living for myself, in the way I had always wanted. Quiet, simple, free. And that, I realized, was enough. I had spent so many years silent in the face of betrayal, silent in the face of manipulation. I had lived my life like a book that had never been opened, chapters filled with secrets, pain, and unspoken truths. But no more. The quiet had served its purpose. But now I needed to speak. I started writing. At first, it wasn't a grand gesture. It was simple, the way it had always been for me, just words on a page. I didn't even know where to begin, so I started with the truth, the small things, the quiet moments I had carried with me, the memories that I had buried deep down. I wrote about my childhood, about the dreams I once had, the way I had tried to build a family out of love, out of sacrifice. I wrote about the years I had spent giving everything I had to make sure they never went without. I wrote about the moments I had spent wondering if I would ever get anything in return, and about the years of giving until there was nothing left. As the words flowed, I found myself getting deeper into the story. I wrote about him, the son who had once been my world, the child I had protected, the one I had given everything to. I wrote about how I had watched him grow up, how I had fought to give him a better life, even when it meant giving up my own. I wrote about the day I found out what he had done, the loan he had taken out in my name, the lies he had told, the betrayal I had never seen coming. I wrote about the anger, the disappointment, the disbelief. But more than that, I wrote about the strength I had found in myself, the strength to stand up and fight back. I wrote about the day I had taken back my name, my voice, and my life. It was a long letter, filled with years of truth, with everything I had never said aloud. It wasn't written in rage. It wasn't filled with anger. It was written in pen, in quiet, measured words, because I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to raise my voice. I had already done that in the quiet actions I had taken, in the way I had reclaimed my life. When I finished, I sat back and looked at the words in front of me. I didn't need to send it. I didn't need to make him read it. But I knew what I had to do. I knew I had to give him something, even if it was just a single letter. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't expect anything from him. But I needed him to know the truth. I needed him to see it in black and white, to see the consequences of his actions, to know that I wasn't going to let him hide behind excuses anymore. I sealed the envelope, but I didn't send it. I left it unopened. I wasn't sending it to him for his sake. I was sending it for mine. I wanted him to know that I had found my voice, that I had found my strength in the quiet, in the words that had always been there, waiting to be spoken. And in that letter, in those pages, I had taken back what he had tried to steal from me. He had taken my credit, my name, my trust, but I took my voice back. I took it back in ink, in words that would never fade, in a story that was finally mine to tell. And no matter what he thought, no matter how many times he called or sent flowers, nothing could take that from me. My story was mine. My truth was mine. And now it was written. I kept the letter unopened. And in that silence, I found my peace. I had made my decision, and the steps were easy enough. It wasn't about running away or hiding. It wasn't about trying to erase everything. It was about closing a chapter, one that had been filled with more pain than I was willing to carry anymore. I wasn't afraid of what came next. In fact, I welcomed it. The quiet felt like freedom, a space I hadn't known I needed until I found it. First, I left his number behind. I didn't delete it from my Fonino need for drama. No need for finality that was too loud. I just stopped calling. I stopped checking the messages, stopped wondering if he was trying to reach out, stopped waiting for the apology that I had already received far too late. His number sat there in my contacts, untouched, like an old receipt in a drawer that I had no use for anymore. I didn't need it. I didn't need him. Then, I did something I hadn't thought about doing before. I enlisted my name. Quietly and without fanfare, I removed myself from the world he could still find me in. No more public records. No more listings. No more digital traces of me for him to latch onto. It wasn't about hiding. It wasn't about being scared. It was simply about making it clear to myself that I wasn't waiting for him to come looking for me anymore. I wasn't waiting for a call, a message, or an apology that would never come at the right time. I didn't change addresses to hide. I changed because I was done waiting to be found. I was done with the cycles, done with the hopes that maybe this time, he would get it right. I didn't need to keep hoping. I didn't need to keep wondering if I would ever be good enough for him to recognize my worth. I had recognized it for myself. And that was enough. There was no moment of dramatic closure, no loud declaration. I didn't need to shout or explain myself to anyone, especially not him. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I had given him enough of myself already. Now, I was just taking it back. I think about the day I left. The house was quiet, the air still, and for the first time in so long, I didn't feel the weight of the years pressing on my chest. I had lived through so much. I had carried so much, done so much, given so much. And now, I was walking away from it all, leaving nothing but the quiet behind me. The truth is, you don't need a funeral to bury a bond. Bonds are buried in the small, everyday decisions, the ones where you stop putting someone else's needs above your own, the ones where you stop waiting for recognition, for validation, for someone to finally see you for who you are. Those bonds are buried in the moments when you finally decide that enough is enough, when you decide to stop giving pieces of yourself away to people who don't value them. You let go, not with a bang, but with a quiet, unspoken release. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. I didn't need to make a big show of it. I didn't need his approval or his acknowledgement. The goodbye had already happened long before I walked away. And when I left, I didn't look back. I was finally free. Free from the years of waiting. Free from the pain of trying to make something work that had never worked in the first place. I had taken back my life, and that was enough. I let go without a sound. And in that silence, I found the peace I had been searching for all along. Your writing beautifully captures the sense of quiet strength and empowerment in letting go and reclaiming one's life. The progression of emotions releasing, reflecting, and ultimately finding peace is strikingly powerful. It's a poignant reminder that true closure often comes without drama, just through the decision to move on and choose peace for oneself. If you'd like any additional changes or additions to the narrative, feel free to let me know. My story doesn't make noise. It doesn't scream for attention or demand acknowledgement. It moves quietly through the world, woven into the lives of those who were close enough to see the truth, and yet too far away to ever fully understand it. They talk those who never truly knew me, but only after I'm long gone. It will be their regret, their need to make sense of what was left behind. They will try to fill the silence with their words, but it will always be too late. They'll speak my name when it no longer matters, when the chance to make things right has already passed, when the final chapter has been written in a way they didn't expect. They'll say I was strong. They'll say I was wise. But by then, it won't matter. I was the signature he forged, the one he thought he could use without consequence. But I was also the one who signed his reckoning, in the quiet of the courtroom, in the stillness of my own heart. And when they speak of me, it will be too late for him to undo what he did, too late for him to claim any part of me. I was always more than he knew, and now I am the final word.